G'day, this is the Happy Families podcast, and tomorrow it is one of the most important days on the calendar for people who love traditions like running around neighbourhoods looking like goblins, ghouls, witches, skeletons, and those
Pumpkins.
kinds of things. You're a pumpkin. And knocking on the doors of strangers and asking for treats. Today, it's a Doctor's Desk episode with a difference. Recent research indicates that one of the most popular, one of the most common childhood diagnoses is related to Halloween. We're going to explore that, what it means, what the implications are for us as parents and for this specific diagnosis, not to mention Halloween, right after the break. Stay with us. You get real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. That's this one, the Happy Families podcast. We're Justin and Kylie Coulson, parents of 6 kids. I'm the co-host and parenting expert on that hit TV
today?
show, Parental Guide.
Seriously, slow down.
What do you mean?
You're like an Energizer bunny.
It's a Doctor's Desk episode. I get very excited about Doctor's Desk.
That's one of us.
Yeah, I can see the enthusiasm just oozing out of your pores. You know what's going to be oozing out of everyone's pores tomorrow night? Sugar. Yeah, Halloween tomorrow. Our opinion this year, we've gone gung-ho a couple of times with Halloween. Our opinion this year is not doing it. Yeah. Couldn't be bothered. Too much sugar, too tired, too much else going on, too hot. Can you come up with another two something? Just not happening.
I came up with the best Halloween decoration.
Oh, yeah?
Our new pool has coloured lights. I'm just going to make the pool red.
Blood red.
Done.
That's gross.
Done. It's done.
Gross. All right, today's Doctor's Desk, Kylie, you set it up because I'm going to do a lot of talking in this one. That's why you don't like the Doctor's Desk, isn't it? Because I do all the talking. I get sciencey. Is it the science or is it the fact that you're not talking as much as you want to? Or is
Look, I don't keep very quiet about the fact that I don't really enjoy many of the doctor's desks, but I am actually intrigued about this one.
This one's a cracker.
So there's been some research done recently that would suggest that ADHD diagnoses actually increase during Halloween.
Correct. Okay, so this is a brand new study. It came out a couple of months ago, and it caught my attention because over the years, ADHD, even though more and more people are aware of it, more and more people are being diagnosed with it, ADHD has become an increasingly provocative diagnosis. I mean, most diseases, as we learn more about them, they become easier for us to understand, but ADHD seems to be going the other way. And in a recent working paper that was published in the National Bureau of Economic Research, the paper is called Halloween, ADHD, and Subjectivity in Medical Diagnosis. Some Harvard researchers spotted an opportunity for a wonderful natural experiment that the calendar provides with the Halloween holiday. And kids getting a little bit hyper because of all the sugar and the social opportunity and the running around the neighbourhood and doing what they're doing. So they were really curious whether changes in young patients' behaviour related to the excitement of wearing a costume and collecting lollies on Halloween might influence the diagnosis of ADHD. And they analysed the data on more than 100 million paediatric visits. Okay, so this is no small sample. This is legitimately a serious study. And what they found is this. There's a 14% increase in childhood ADHD diagnoses on Halloween compared to the 10 surrounding weekdays. I'll say that again, a 14% increase on Halloween compared with the 10 surrounding weekdays.
So when you're talking about 100 million
paediatric visits, yep.
14% is a big deal.
That's a large number.
That's huge.
Yes. For that particular diagnosis on that particular day compared to all the other days around it, there must be something particularly unique about October the 31st that makes for ADHD diagnoses more likely.
As you're talking,
Yep.
It reminds me of a conversation I just recently had with your mum. She was going through some old journal entries and she shared the funniest one. She's acknowledged that she's been on a bit of a rampage and she was really unkind to everybody. And then she kind of paused and she said, I wonder if it had anything to do with the 14 Ferrero Rochers that I ate that day. So I don't think this is just a kid thing.
Yeah, that's such a good story. I love it. I was wondering where you're going there, but I do remember that story. I ate 14 Ferrero Rochers and then I was horrible to everybody for the rest of the day. Made me feel good, but it made everyone else really, really annoying.
But no, the funniest part was she says, I'm never going to eat chocolate again.
Right.
Your mum is the biggest chocoholic I know.
I think that I've heard her say that over the years since I've known her at least 400 times. At least, probably 4,000 times.
And you tell her that you're giving up chocolate and she just keeps bringing it.
Yeah, that's right, because when she gives up chocolate, it's meaningless. So if anyone else is giving it up, they mustn't be giving it up either. All right, let's talk about this study. Does that spark any questions for you? Is there anything that you'd like to know?
Well, I guess let's go back to the beginning. How is ADHD actually diagnosed?
So this is really important because in medicine, the first step is you got to get the diagnosis accurate. And yet there's a whole lot of conditions, including attention deficit hyperactivity, I can't say it now, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that requires pediatricians and GPs and mental health professionals to rely on much more subjective criteria, like the observation of symptoms and behaviours. See, you can do a blood test and work out whether somebody's diabetic. You can do an X-ray and work out whether somebody's broken their arm. But you cannot scan a person's brain or take a blood test and discover whether they have ADHD. We do not have objective measures for it. And this is one of the major criticisms of ADHD. So to diagnose ADHD, which is getting to the core of the question you asked, there is a formalism that goes into the diagnosis, but ultimately it's a snapshot of somebody's subjective opinion. So pediatricians, child mental health specialists, whoever it is, what they do is they assess a pattern of behaviour across school life and life at home, maybe other contexts as well if they're relevant. They get information from parents, from teachers, and then they pretty much say, what's going on here? But the actual diagnosis will happen on a specific day. So when the doctor's making that diagnosis, the conditions that are occurring on that specific day could influence whether or not, like, let's say that mental health specialist is on the fence, but on that particular day it's Halloween and the kids are a bit hyper and there's a whole lot of sugar and junk and costumes and excitement and they're like, yeah, your child does seem pretty edgy today. And they're not thinking, because it's Halloween, they're just going, your child seems edgy and we're talking about ADHD. So ADHD is diagnosed subjectively. There are no objective measures for it. The criteria are loose and are becoming looser. They have become looser over the last couple of decades. And that is problematic. I'm not going to lie about it. That is a really big problem for ADHD diagnosis.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the subjectivity of this diagnosis?
Yeah, so we've been through this with our own kids. So
well, I'm thinking back to that experience and I'm thinking back to the day I walked in. I was convinced that we had a very different child to the rest of our children. But that particular day, it was like she pulled out every conceivable behaviour challenge that we'd had and displayed it for the psychologist.
For the clinician, yeah.
Literally. I had never seen her that bad before, but she had displayed all of those things individually at different times.
Yeah, that's right.
It wasn't Halloween either.
No. Well, who knows? It could have been, but it wouldn't have been a big deal for us anyway because we don't really do much about it. So the diagnosis, the diagnostic criteria for ADHD is literally subjectivity is baked in. It's part of how you assess ADHD. You cannot assess ADHD without the subjective responses. So, and I remember you saying this as we went through the checklist for our children. There's a question like, is this child fidgety? Are they restless? Do they move their bodies a lot? Do they talk when they should be talking? Do they interrupt? And
they're all childlike behaviours.
Well, every child does. That's right. And
so do adults.
What do you mean? I would never interrupt anybody. My goodness. And so obviously when you're talking about parents, they don't necessarily know how everyone else's kids are. Teachers will have a much broader population to sample from and say, oh my goodness.
But I guess that's why part of that testing process involves other professionals to kind of collaborate.
Well, supposedly, but they're going to be guided by what the parents are saying and by what the teachers are saying. So that's only so helpful. But that's how the subjectivity comes into play. This is the Doctor's Desk episode of the Happy Families podcast. We're talking about ADHD and Halloween and whether or not the diagnoses that you get are actual diagnoses or whether there's too much subjectivity involved. More on this in just a sec. Stay with us. We're back with the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. You have another question on the tip of your tongue.
Well, from what you've shared previously, it would suggest to me that you think that often there's misdiagnosis happen.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, what is problematic with that?
So this is really, really difficult because this whole conversation, I know that we're going to get emails from people who say that I'm invalidating their diagnoses or that I'm giving short shrift to ADHD. I mean, I've got a course out there to help parents who are raising kids who have a diagnosis, right? So I recognize that if you've got a constellation of behaviours that are challenging, then you need help with them. And you can call it ADHD or you can call it challenging behaviour. It doesn't really matter. What we've got to do is work out how to help. And I'm concerned about treatment pathways. That's the medical jargon, the technical term for when you get a diagnosis, here are the steps that are supposed to be followed. This is what most people will be focused on. So let's say in the context of this study, you take your child in on the wrong day and the likelihood of them getting a diagnosis is significantly higher. Let's say you've got 2 or 3 kids that are being diagnosed. 2 might be diagnosed on any given day, but on Halloween, that goes up to 3 because the subjective cultural environment, that's changing things. And the problem, to answer your question with misdiagnosis, is that means that that's one more child that's wearing a label. It means it's one more child who is going to potentially end up with a medication prescription, one more child that's going to end up on speed, one more child who's going to now feel like not only do they already feel different, but now they've got a label confirming they're different. And I've always been pretty clear on the podcast. I understand that in some cases labels can be really, really helpful, but I find all too often that labels are used to explain away rather than support change in behaviour.
Recently, I had a conversation with a specialist in relation to our daughter, and they definitely wanted to push me down a specific line of treatment. Yeah. And I just said to her, I said, at this point in time, she's completely unaware that she's different. And I said, I'm going to bubble that for as long as I can because she doesn't think there's anything wrong with her.
So this goes to what I think is a much deeper and broader discussion about ADHD. And it's also a really hard one to talk about. And again, this is the kind of thing that gets people really upset. I'm not trying to be insensitive. This is a sensitive zone.
But the reality is there isn't anything wrong with her.
Thank you.
There isn't anything wrong with her.
Right.
She just doesn't fit the mould of what we consider normal.
And there's so much variation in normal.
That's exactly right.
I'm reading this book. I'm almost finished it, called Searching for Normal by Sammy Tamimi. I love this book. I also hate it, but I love this book. This book is worth so much in terms of the conversations and the provocations and the thoughtfulness that it gives. And what this study does is it reaffirms a lot of what I've been reading in this book and certainly some of my own misgivings about this specific diagnosis over the last decade as I've learned more and more and more about it and gone deeper and deeper into it. So about 10% of Australian kids are now being diagnosed. Boys are significantly more likely to be diagnosed than girls because they mature later. They learn to regulate and inhibit later. And there are really big questions being asked because there is no blood test, there's no brain scan, there's no objective criteria here. Some people are saying, well, is it really a disorder? Like these are questions that we were asking 20 years ago. And now we've gone really hardcore for the last 20 years down this, yes, it is, diagnose it, down that path. And now we're having really, really smart people, really incredible people say, we need to rethink this. We may not have gotten this right. Is this within some range of normal, to speak to your point? That's what brought me back to where we are here. Are medications the right answer? So this is a massive debate in educational circles, in psychological circles, in medical circles, in psychiatric circles. It's a really big thing. People are concerned about overdiagnosis. They're concerned about drugs. They're concerned about overtreatment. They're concerned about harm. And they're also concerned about underdiagnosis and undertreatment of kids in populations where help is often not available. It's a really, really tricky thing to discuss without upsetting people. But again, you look at what the diagnostic criteria are. You look at the fact that you've got more kids than ever in the younger parts of the cohort getting the diagnosis. And you've got to wonder if we're actually diagnosing ADHD or immaturity.
More than that, though, when we look at the increase of diagnoses over the last decade or so, would it not be wise to actually question the environment our kids are in?
You haven't read the book, but this is what Sammy Tamimi says. He says, let's stop saying that there's a problem with this child individually, and let's start saying what is going on in the environment that so many children are now receiving a diagnosis that once upon a time did not even exist.
That's exactly right. You take a child out of that specific environment and all of a sudden their behaviour changes.
I had this exact conversation with some parents the other day. I made a glib and strong statement about ADHD, probably much stronger than I really meant to. Someone got offended, and then we had a much broader, in-depth conversation like this. And that's the point that I made. You take that child out of the classroom or out of a screen-soaked setting and put them into a play-based setting.
Or out of a dictatorship.
Right, and give them some autonomy. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we see such a different child.
That's right.
Presented.
That's right. So this is an important study. I really think that it's an important study because it's, again, raising questions and saying, what are we doing here with this diagnosis?
So does it actually shed any light on ADHD itself?
And this is a very quick answer, it just highlights how subjective the diagnosis is.
Yeah, okay.
To me, that's the critical thing.
We've kind of touched on this a few times, but just a little bit of clarity here. It is interesting to me that with all the research we have on ADHD these days, comparative to 10, 20 years ago, why is it that we still, I feel like we've got less clarity now with all the research we have than we've ever had around ADHD?
So Anna Plumb-Jenner, who was one of the researchers here, wrote a book a few years ago called Random Acts of Medicine. And there's a finding reported in that book, but also reported in countless other places, that kids who are born at the late part of the year tend to be much more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than kids born at the start of the year. Okay, so in Australia, the school year, if you're born later in the year, it depends on where the cutoffs are, but basically if you're the youngest kid in the year, you're much more likely to be diagnosed with it. The reason is that you're the youngest person in the class, so your behaviour is a bit different, and we start to make these diagnoses. So realistically, what I think here is that the implication is that a lot of the kids that are getting a diagnosis may not have ADHD. They're just different because they've been alive for 1 year less than the older kids in the class. And if you're a general practitioner or if you're a psychologist and you're making an ADHD diagnosis, you want to make sure that you're taking into account birthday, and you want to take into account gender, and you want to take into account what else has been going on in that child's environment. There is so much other stuff that
how much screen time and how much outdoor time and how much connective time they're having. Like, there's so many factors to round out a healthy human being.
And that is our Doctor's Desk episode. I mean, I'd love to keep talking about it, but our time is well and truly up. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think we've covered it all.
All right, no worries at all. So we'll link to the study in the show notes. We'll also link to Sammy Tamimi's book, Searching for Normal, in the show notes. I'm very excited. Just as I started to finish the book, as I moved into the last chapter, I got an email from the publicist of the book, and they said, would you like him on your podcast? So we're going to interview him early next year, and I'm going to go into a lot of depth on exactly this topic. It's just too important to not talk about more.
Well, I'm looking forward to that one.
I love it when you look forward to my interviews with amazing people. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Doctor's Desk episode of the Happy Families podcast. The podcast is produced by Justin Rillon from Bridge Media. Mim Hammonds provides admin, research and additional support. And if you'd like more info about the stuff we've talked about, please have a quick look at the show notes and we will link to everything that you need there. If you'd like a resource to help because you've got a child who is behaving in challenging ways, check out my book, Parental Guidance. You can get it online wherever you find books, in bookstores and happyfamilies.com.au.